Hey guys, what's up? It's Finch here. Today I'm going to bring you guys a special Metagame Monday. We're going to be going over the history of the SSOU metagame. Starting from day one, yes, this replay was all the way back in November of 2019, back when Dynamax was allowed, back when the metagame was entirely different. We're going to go back to day one. This is actually a room tournament. We're just going to play a bunch of replays in the background pretty much, but at the start of the metagame, Dynamax was allowed. The first ban from SSOU was actually Shadow Tag in the first days back when ABR was cheerleader, and there was this whole controversy surrounding sleep clause. Long story short, eventually he stepped down from leader to councilman, and I became cheerleader for the next 6 or so months. Close to 8 months, actually, I guess. But then we were able to ban Moody because it was kind of ridiculous, and that was actually in the middle of a suspect of Dynamax. So let's discuss Dynamax, because why the hell not? And before I get into Dynamax, I just want to say, thank you guys for all the views. This is going to be the last Metagame Monday before DLC2. All the Metagame Mondays after this are going to switch to the DLC2 metagames. That's why I want to do this little history video to wrap it up. But thank you guys so much for all the support. Recently, we've been growing a tons of channel, and it's been so fun. But anyway, so Dynamax completely whooped the metagame. It more or less made it into a kind of a real guessing game in that you have to time your Dynamax really well. And if you didn't time it well, then bad things are going to happen. You could potentially lose multiple Pokemon. Or if you're facing a flying type with X Airwind, then he can even potentially sweep you because he gets the speed boost and stuff like that. And it was just really on top of things. And Ditto was largely used as a counter to Dynamax because you could kind of take your Dynamax sweep and sweep alongside it. Things like Ditto were very common because that, as you see in both teams, was virtually staple. Life Orb Clefable was also insanely effective in this metagame as it had all the coverage in the world to use Dynamax. Hatterene was also a pretty good Dynamax user as a sweeper and a Mystical Fire, Psychic, Dazzling Gleam or Drain Kiss, whatever it might have you. Galarian Darmanitan was kind of seen as the anti-meta metagame in a sense that it basically forced you to make a guessing game no matter what you were using, given how strong it was and how kind of unchecked it was in the metagame. And eventually it got banned, we'll get to that in a bit. And also things like Bulk of Corviknight were used. Also need to keep in mind this is before Pokemon Home, so things like Knockoff on Bisharp or Soft Boiled on Magikarp Clefable were not usable. So moreover, it really warped things. There was also an abundance of Pokemon just had a lot of coverage, like Rotom Heat. Hydreigon were a good example. They were able to use Dynamax. Dragapult was another great example. People didn't yet use the Hex set so much as to use like kind of all-out attacker variants, as you saw earlier in this game. Moreover, things again with like Max Airwind, they really just took shit out. I mean, this Corviknight is a great example, just cleaning this game up. And there's no way for the Ditto to beat it after the Dynamax has already been used and it locks into Roost, and that about does it. Because of course, Ditto run through a Scarf, and yeah, the game pretty much ends from here, as you see, as Corviknight's gonna win. So yeah, we'll just skip through this, but ultimately we elected to ban Dynamax. It was probably a bit controversial in smaller communities, but overall it was just really ridiculous. Everyone voted, not everyone, but like almost 90% of people that voted to ban it. I was very strong in that bandwagon as well, needless to say. Then we banned darmanitan-galar via a quick ban. A couple weeks later, it was clearly broken even in the Dynamax metagame when people used Dynamax defensively to keep it in check. But it got even worse as time went on when Dynamax passed, and it was just really hard to keep it in check, and the council was very unanimous on it, so we decided to get rid of it, and honestly, we might not even free it for DLC2, given how ridiculous it is. And then, some tournaments happened. The ladder really started to develop into like a clean metagame, and I actually loved laddering in early January into February of this year, truth be told. Pokemon that were really kind of starting to define the metagame started to pop up. For example, we saw things like Trick on Clefable and even Trick on Rotoms start popping up a ton. Trick really started to become as prominent as it now is in that metagame, you could say. In addition to that, there's also Pokemon like Seismitoad, which not only were needed to check Dracovish, but also on top of that, Seismitoad was great against things like Rotom Heat, which were very common in the metagame. And overall, Seismitoad became the best stealth rocker in the tier at this point in time due to its roll compression and its ability to get up rocks, force status, and check a couple of really common Pokemon that you see. In addition to that, we also saw the rise of Dugtrio eventually. Dugtrio was a really oppressive trapper that we're going to actually get to a fun replay with in a second, but in the meantime, there was also a really common craze that happened, not only during Smogon Premier League, which you're watching a couple of replays for now, but also in the coming days and weeks and months, in that a lot of people were using ghost types. And for example, here you see a Dragapult and an Aegislash on Chandelure. And while Chandelure never rose like super high in prominence and usage, it was actually used a decent amount alongside Gengar, Aegislash, and of course Dragapult, which is seen as one of the most timeless Pokemon in the metagame. And here you see Red, White, and Teal dismantling now infamous user Charm Flash with a Chandelure, but Needless to say, Ghost ran rampant. There was only Mandibuzz and really Hydreigon to wallet. Tyranitar was seeing very sporadic usage at the time, and normal types like Snorlax actually have ended up popping up in usage a lot during things like the official Smogon tournament and on ladder on semi-stall teams as well. We also saw a surge in fighting types. For example, Conkeldurr with Guts was very common and good in this metagame, far before we saw things like offensive Urshifu and Heracross be released and whatnot. So yeah, ultimately, this was a pretty lucky sequence here for Teal, but he won the game regardless, and just showing off the ghost types. But what might be my favorite replay from that period of time is this, and it really highlights Dugtrio in the metagame. As Dugtrio at this point in time was allowed before we eventually suspected it. Here's a funny story coming from the inside that you guys probably wouldn't know if you didn't hear it from me. Seeing as I'm on the council last year at the time, we actually had the Dugtrio suspect like ready to go. Like I was writing it up in the process of it, and then we heard that Pokemon Home was coming out the next day. And I actually heard this news right when I was in the middle of Pokemon Club at my school, because that time I was still a senior in college. Now I'm graduated, and I heard about it. I was like, oh my god, we were about to post this Dugtrio suspect, but now we can't because Pokemon Home is about to be released. The metagame's going to go into complete chaos. We're getting a ton of new Pokemon, new moves, like again, knockoff on Bisharp, Softball and Clefable, Teleport and Clefable. There's so many big things that changed, but here's a really fun replay seeing how ridiculous Dugtrio gets. So I wanna kick on fast here, and I wanna fast forward a little bit. So we see Togekiss, yada yada yada. It gets Dittoed, okay, it's fine and well. You can't flinch through everything, thankfully. And yeah, eventually it's like, okay, it's not going to. He ran out of air/BP basically, but what happened here was Hydreigon got and keep in mind, even Roost wasn't out either. So things like things that didn't learn Roost naturally, like had learned it through the TM, they couldn't do it. So Togekiss, for example, they couldn't. And now here's what happens here. So Togekiss comes in, it air slashes this, air slashes through it. Eventually Sylveon comes in, Drill comes in, and the Drill kills the Corviknight, and then Dugtrio kills the X-Drill. Okay, that's fine. But then look, Air Balloon Dugtrio for other Dugtrio. It just started using Agility and Hone Claws, and then it completely swept Twixtree's team, which is just hilarious. And it goes to show that this metagame was just ridiculously Dugtrio and trapping centric. So lo and behold, once Pokemon Home came out and we got around to banning Melmetal and Kyurem Black right off the bat, we actually got to ban, we got to suspect Arena Trap. As you're seeing this hilarious Dugtrio being thwarted, yeah. Sorry to take a sip of water, but yeah, no, this was really funny. And anyway, so we got around to banning Dugtrio via a suspect of Arena Trap. So Arena Trap was really what got banned, but yeah, no, you're not gonna use Dugtrio without Arena Trap, obviously. And so then that happened, and we're like, okay, finally things are starting to settle down. We're seeing a surge in Zeraora and Kyurem that both came with Pokemon Home. Zeraora, most notably this generation, well, it doesn't have Hidden Power Ice. It has an abundance of coverage moves. There are less bulky grasses. There was no Tangrowth. There was no Amoonguss at this point in time, so it was very easy to abuse it. You grass starter player up for things like Hippowdon/Seismitoad and Como made it so there were very few actual hard counters to Zeraora in this metagame. It became an absolute monster with a 4 attack or a bulk upset, to the point it was one of the best, 5 to 6 Pokemon in the metagame at the time. And we did see a counter surge in things like Hippowdon and Como in a bit, which we'll get to in a bit. But Kyurem was also something that stole the show, especially once Dugtrio got banned, because usually people use Sash Reversal or Choice Band Dugtrio to help revenge kill, or potentially even, switch into and take out Kyurem, which is really cool. We did see some people also abuse Kyurem with Dragon Dance alongside Dugtrio to trap Toxapex, which was also a cool tech at the time. But regardless of that, yeah, there's a whole lot of nonsense. Dugtrio helped and very, very much hurt Kyurem, to the point where when Dugtrio got banned, Kyurem immediately surged in usage. People were using Specs a ton with Wish plus Teleport Clefable, because at this point in time, there were not as many things to punish Wish plus Teleport Clefable. There was no Cinderace, no Magearna, no Aegislash, no Urshifu to get through Protect, not as much Nasty Plot Dragon, no Thunderwave Dragapult, etc. Not as much Swords Dance Drill either. So eventually, Wish plus Teleport Clefable just was the new norm. It was on more teams than not. Clefable usage was well north of like 65-70% at points in time. To the point that high was like, damn, we promised we were going to retest Melmetal because it was never in an OU tier before anyway. So after we banned Dugtrio and after we quick banned Kyurem Black and Melmetal, we eventually got to retesting Melmetal. In this replay, long story short, TDK wins with his Rotom-Heat. I think he gets a crit here eventually, but he had a lot of... Yeah, I got a crit there, and then it just kind of wins the game from there. Yeah, that was that. But now this is actually a replay from Smogon Tour Finals. Smogon Tour Semifinals, rather, between ABR and Corazon, but that's neither here nor there. It's just out in the background. But yeah, so at this point, it was like, damn, so much has already happened already. Yeah, it's been a pretty freaking active first 5 or 6 months of the tier, but Kyurem was surging, and Drakefish was ridiculous, and every team was just kind of constrained. It had used Clefable for one thing or another. Defensive structures were a bit limited. Como also saw an absolute surge in usage due to Zeraora. Same with Hippowdon, even Ferrothorn a bit. So, you know, Zeraora was kind of a polarizing Pokemon. Kyurem was a polarizing Pokemon. Drakefish basically forced size Method or things like Rocky Hamakomo plus Toxapex or Ferrothorn plus Toxic, you know, those type of cores. Honestly, ABR's team was underprepared for it, which is kind of makes it a miracle that he actually found a way to win this game. But let's do the NRD. Every single clef felt like it was wished for at this point in time. But anyway, eventually we suspected Dracovish, and it was kind of controversial because it was one of the last things that we were able to suspect prior to DLC1, which we knew was coming out in June, I believe, or maybe it was late May. I think it was June. Decided to set up some water, and lo and behold, after a while. I'm going to put this on hyper fast just to get it over with because we're getting pretty quick into this. Lo and behold, we ended up having Dracovish banned by a very wide margin. And that was that for Dracovish. Yeah, we're seeing Specs Pelipper, which is fun. Yeah, there were some weather teams at this point in time. Specs Dragapult was also really good. It was at the point where Dragapult didn't really have the same standardized mix of sets that it did now at this point, I guess you could say. Anyway, yeah. So eventually Dracovish got banned, and then we saw the decline of things like Max Defense and Rocky Helmet Toxapex. And, I forgot to mention, Melmetal stayed banned. I really contested that ban. I thought it wasn't very broken, but others felt differently, and we're going to be retesting Melmetal. Like, we're going to be letting it into the DLC2 tier, so that'll be fun to see. But regardless of that fact, it's going to be really cool to see what that comes of in the metagame, and we're gonna also be seeing other Pokemon as well, but that's for later on in this video when we get there. But for now, eventually we banned Dracovish. It got banned by a very large margin, and then DLC1 came out. We saw a surge of so many different things. We saw Cinderace get Libero, which was actually right before this. The hidden abilities got out, so Libero, Cinderace, and Grass User, Rillaboom, and Sniper and Talion, which is pretty irrelevant, unfortunately. We saw Magearna come into the metagame, which I'm not going to have a replay showcasing, unfortunately, but I promise you it was so good. We'll get to that in a minute. Teleport Blissey eventually picked up steam in the middle of World Cup. Mandibuzz became the prominent defogger just because it was better against Cinderace. It was really good against Excadrill. It gave a resist to Ghost types, which were super common. And also resist Urshifu's Wicked Blow. Urshifu is another Pokemon. Both Urshifu Single and Urshifu Rapid Strike became released in the metagame as well. Yep. Also, there was a surge in Toxapex, which actually made it so that initially Amoonguss wasn't very common. There's also a lot of Skarmory with spikes, which was pretty cool because that just got released and it wasn't very good the prior generation. Heavy Duty Boots was all over. It was on Cinderace, Zeraora, Dragapult, Mandibuzz. Shit, you could see more Pokemon. Slowbro, Rotom, Heat. Pretty much anything that was weak to flying. And yeah, the list goes on and on and on and on. It was so many things that use heavy-duty boots. It was like the heavy-duty boots metagame, pretty much. And honestly, it really kind of dictated the tier. But here you're seeing Cinderace just completely shred a team used by my good friend Zachary here. And that's no surprise, especially when paired with something like Trickle Fable, which, by the way, was surging in usage again at this time. In fact, due to things overwhelming things, Wish plus Teleport Clefable, like Cinderace taking advantage of it, Scizor, Magearna, Excadrill, etc., we actually saw a lot more Trickle Fable to try and be more proactive. And that was fair in the metagame, but it also opened up nasty for things like Cinderace that we just alluded to. So yeah, it's just a Cinderace on Cinderace game, and we're going to see Cinderace kind of just break through eventually. I think he got like 4 kills in this game. I actually uploaded this game on my channel. But yeah, no, and eventually this game just ends at the hands of Cinderace and Hydreigon. Yeah. Alright, but anyway, this is another game for World Cup. Also, eventually we saw the rise of Pokemon like Rhyperior and Crawdaunt as well as balance breakers that were really offering a lot. Rhyperior in particular also checked Volcarona at the time, which was also newly released in the metagame and pretty good, not amazing, but pretty good at this time. And also was really good against Rotom Heat, and it was a soft check to Cinderace because they stopped running High Jump Kick in favor of Gunk Shot for Clefable, which wasn't that surprising, but yeah, anyway, that was the thing. So eventually, as World Cup proceeded and went on more and more, we got around to putting out a survey to the player base at this point in time. And through that survey, we decided that we wanted to ban probably Cinderace and Magearna, but the thing is that Magearna was kind of a problem from once people started using the Choice Specs plus Trick set, which by the way is another example of how ridiculous Trick has been in this metagame with no Z moves and no Mega Evolutions to thwart Trick. So all of a sudden that became a problem. So we're like, okay, we want to suspect Melmetal first, and if Cinderace still persists as a problem, because people actually thought Urshifu was the worst of the 3 initially, but Urshifu settled down a ton after that. So we're like, okay, if it persists as a problem, then what we are going to do is we can always apply the same logic we did to Melmetal to Cinderace. So what we did ultimately was we sussed with the Megierner right after, right around the end of World Cup, and thankfully people agreed to ban it, and that was good. And then we quick banned Cinderace in the condition that we'd retest it, and OLT was right around the corner, which we're going to get to in a minute, but lo and behold, X-Ray ultimately wins this game pretty decisively with a Swords Dance Rhyperior, which was a pretty trendy set at the time. Well, it and Crawdon both got unlucky, but he had such a big lead that he was able to win anyway. Yeah, as you can see here. And this was actually another game where we saw Wish plus Teleport Clefable, which was pretty cool. It actually wasn't used as much back then, but yeah. And now we're at the point where OLT happens. There's a ton of different trends during OLT. Rhyperior saw similar usage. Corviknight started picking up over Mandibuzz, although it's not here in this game in particular. But there's also a rise in teams that use Spikes plus heavy-duty boots users and didn't really prioritize getting Defog up, but rather it was like, okay, I'll force them to Defog, or we'll have hazards up on both sides. So Defog became less necessary. Also, things like Urshifu Rapid plus Pokemon that have used Tox Specs and Amoonguss, such as Jiren popped up, or Carmine, Clefable have used those Pokemon popped up. Sun, and also Tyranitar Sand as a counteraction to Sun popped up. Sun with like Torkoal, Charizard, Cinderace when it was allowed. Volcarona potentially even. Teleport Blissey was really popular in Sun, and yeah, overall those structures were just pretty. They ran rampant in the metagame, you could say. But yeah, no, so that was a thing. And then eventually, as OLT continued to progress, we saw a lot of kind of Pack-Stall teams. And then we saw a lot of Hyper Offense as well. Aegislash finally saw resurgence in usage alongside Ditto seeing usage on Stall to kind of counteract Hyper Offense. And the metagame was just really polarizing. And finally, OLT came to a screeching end. The latter period did anyway. Now we're in the middle of playoffs. And Smogon Snake Draft began. Right after we actually right in the middle of a Cinderace retest. We retested Cinderace, and Cinderace got banned. At this time, the latter unfortunately stopped seeing as much popularity due to OLT ending, and a lot of people actually enjoying National Dex right now, which is really cool. I think it's kind of cool as well, but I'm definitely more excited for DLC2 OU. But yeah, with Cinderace banned, we just kind of ran out of time because eventually they announced that DLC2 would be dropping on October 22nd, which is about a month before I expected it. We were told it happened in mid-late November, so that's rough. Because personally, I believe that Urshifu and Clefable both deserve suspect tests, but really only Urshifu first, because if you ban Clefable, then Urshifu is even more ridiculous, and also Clefable kind of holds things together at the same time, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, now we're basically at where we currently are. Some other trends worth noting, again, alongside Aegislash, his Dragapult has had a ridiculous all-time high right now. Clefable has a wide array of sets. We're seeing Pokemon like Rhyperior, and this game in particular is the coming out party for Choice Band Rhyperior, a set that really took the metagame by storm, if you will. It's been really common throughout the last couple of weeks, and even Swords Dance, especially defensive Rhyperior. This Rhyperior in general has just become like a top 15, 20 Pokemon out of the blue. Because you see it just completely dominating this game, and I mean, I think it got like 4 or 5 kills here, which is kind of funny. Yeah, and I mean, also we're starting to see more like Kyurem pop up more and more, be it Dragon Dance or Specs, both being very threatening, as well as hyper offensive teams running around Urshifu. For example, cores that are able to lure in Clefable for Urshifu, or use Clefable luring in, or use Urshifu luring in Clefable and damaging it to set up for other things, and those kind of synergistic schemes, if you will. So that was really cool. Here's a replay, for example, of me beating Leo, an old friend of mine, with Urshifu. He didn't have a chance given the match. It was really rough for him. But yeah, and so those are some other things that are training right now. We're also seeing a lot more Amoonguss than Tox Specs, which is always cool to see. And I'm trying to see, is the last replay worth showing, or should I cut it out? Yeah, last replay is not worth showing. So yeah, all in all, the metagame now is in a bit better place than it was during OLT, but all things considered, it wasn't in a great place anyway, so it's kind of rough. But with that said, here we are. That's kind of the rough history of the tier. I hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know your thoughts below. I know it was a bit brief. I know this wasn't like a 2-hour BKC special going through the intricacies of the entire metagame, but free to bring to you guys. I'm actually going to do another one of these videos if I'm still uploading, and I think I probably will be once the generation comes to an end. Going over the whole thing, because I figured then we could go in like a lot of depth. I could have other people on, kind of be a collaborative thing. But I just wanted to do this to give you guys a reminder of everything we've been through thus far before we get on to the DLC2 metagame. And I think the best way to watch it closing out is to see Urshifu essentially kill 6 Pokemon, because that's pretty representative of the metagame right now. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to support me, definitely subscribe to the channel, and also check out my new Twitter. The link will be below. And yeah. Have a great day, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed the OU trip to this point. I know it's been kind of turbulent, kind of all over the place, but there's also been a ton of fun that I've had, and I'm sure you guys had as well. And there's going to be a ton more fun to have once DLC 2 comes out on the 22nd. So stay tuned for that. More updates, more videos of that nature. And thank you so much. All right, guys. Peace out. Bye.